Where
Hello.
are you? Where are you? Where are you hanging out there?
Well, I'm hanging out in the Chicago suburbs.
Okay. No, I thought I thought you were outside, but you're not. You're in Chicago suburbs, inside. I couldn't see very well because it's a small little window. Anyway, just curious to know where you were.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Where are you?
I'm in on the coast in Denmark.
Well, I would like to be where you are.
Well, it's a nice day here. Yes, I'm a lucky me. Basically, it's a nice warm day, and I've just been swimming, so that's why I look a little bit disheveled.
Well, how wonderful. It's great to see you, and congratulations on.
We should get on with the. Sorry, I don't want to take up your time with small talk.
It's okay.
It's
It's okay. It's
big talk if you like.
great to connect with you. And what a film. I'm a fan of your other work as well. But this is such a uh, kind of vibrant wild way to tell a story, I think, Samuel Beckett's life. So, can we first start to talk about the wonderful Gabriel Byrne and how you worked with him and what you felt he brought to this? Because it's quite stunning in how he captures the so many kind of different versions of Beckett.
Well, I think that casting was key, and the project came to me during the pandemic, which was a very intriguing time to be given a project about Samuel Beckett when we're all cut off from each other, which is the predicament of his characters. You know, the cliche of Beckett is often true. His characters are sort of cut off from each other and don't communicate with each other very well, and that was our given condition during the pandemic. So I'd read some Beckett when I was younger, but not a lot. So it felt like a very intriguing time to be thinking about a writer with his kind of ideas. And when I began to think about when I read the script, I thought, well, this is interesting. I'll read some Beckett, but who can do this? And the first thought I had was Gabriel, who I'd long admired as an actor. And I thought, well, I'm not sure I'm right for this or whether I want to do this. But if Gabriel were to do it, that would really convince me because I think I've got the one thing I need in place to make this work, which is the main character. So I reached out to Gabriel through a mutual friend, and we started talking over Zoom about the story, the script. He liked it. He had some questions, and then we found common ground between us, but also with the script. So Gabriel then signed up to do it, and that then allowed me to say, well, I can do this as well. So he enfranchised me, and I think maybe I enfranchised him a bit as well. Um, and then became a kind of ongoing dialogue for about 6 months. And we both knew and acknowledged that Gabriel doesn't look a huge amount like the Samuel Beckett that we all know, this sort of gaunt, sort of nicotine stained, wrinkly, very powerful looking man. But Gabriel could channel a lot of the sort of vibe of Beckett, which he did very well, I think. So we styled him as best we could to look like the Beckett we know, but we knew that it was going to be in the playing of it that this would really work. And so, and Gabriel has to play, as you know from the film, there's Beckett and there's an alter ego who's called Beckett as well, who he talks to in the course of this film. It's the construct of the film that we see these two versions of Beckett in a sort of dialogue about his life. And the principle of their dialogue is, well, all the things you're most ashamed of, let's go through those, starting with your relationship with your mother. So Gabriel, the casting of Gabriel and the work with Gabriel was really the key to the film's achievement, if it has one, because I think that worked out very well. And it was just a joy to work with him. And we were in this together. It was a very small budget, so it wasn't like we were particularly had lots of resources or lots of comfort around what we were doing. But it was a very sort of rewarding shoot because of that collaboration with Gabriel and the fact that we began to work quite early on. Oh, this is going to work. This feels right to me.
Right. Thank you for that. I found that he balanced those two aspects of Beckett quite phenomenally, as he's a
Mm.
phenomenal actor. Um, Samuel Beckett is revered, and it's great to see something like this, in our modern times. Can you talk about why you feel it's important to shine the lens on such an icon like Beckett, especially at a time when some parts of our history seem to be fading away?
Well, indeed, I mean, it struck me when I began to read Beckett again in middle age, as opposed to being a young student, that he'd sort of caught something about our present zeitgeist that I found really interesting, which is often in Beckett's plays, characters are in very absurd situations, but don't really acknowledge that absurdity. I mean, in Happy Days, which is a play where the female character is up to her neck in sand, and it doesn't ever comment on that or have any kind of self-conscious awareness of her predicament. In Waiting for Godot, we've got two sort of vaguely disenfranchised people who don't go anywhere and nor seem to want to go anywhere. And so what struck me going back to Beckett, and in Krapp's last tape, we've got a man again who's sort of stuck somewhere and can't go anywhere in a kind of absurd situation. And it struck me that's sort of where we'd kind of got to as well in a sort of historical sense. I mean, in my country, we'd had this Brexit situation where we'd sort of strangely and perversely and weirdly decided to sever all our trading relationships with our nearest partners. And in your case, I'm not, without being overly political, the thing that struck me most about the Trump project was how ridiculous it was, how preposterous it was that someone of this sort of intellectual or lack of intellectual capabilities and a reality TV star could become president and do the things he did. That was so absurd. So I kind of made this connection. I mean, to rather long-winded answer, but that's what I made, was that we're living in a world that Beckett understood already as being, without recognizing the absurdity of it, without saying this is actually ridiculous. What we're doing in these sort of geopolitical ways is so absurd. And we've now got preposterous characters like Boris Johnson and Donald Trump and God knows who else, who are taken seriously as sort of as serious politicians, and they're not. So without getting overly political about it, it struck me that Beckett's view of an absurd world had come true in ways that I hadn't expected and could make that connection very easily. And maybe people can when they see the film too.
Right. I feel like I could have a conversation with you on just that for like several hours. I'm always very curious to find out what Europeans feel about what's going on here, or people in other countries. I'm just very curious about that. So thank you for that. Can you talk about what or how you and Gabriel found the rhythm between the two different Becketts, and did that happen right away? Did it, was it like, okay, you're day one, we're shooting and we're going to do these two different?
Well, it's a very good question. So the location that I decided to use in the script, it's not really described very well or in any detail. So I found this location that I thought worked for this dialogue, which is a kind of Beckett-like location. We're not quite sure where it is. It feels timeless and it feels sort of somewhere, but like in French, he calls the wasteland un lieu vague, a vague place. And so this is what this is. It's a vague place. And so the last thing you want to do with an actor, any actor, is to say, well, let's do the most difficult things that we need to do at 6 o'clock in the morning on day one of our shoot. But the location we'd chosen obliged us, that was only available for 3 days at the very beginning of our shoot. So day one, 6 o'clock in the morning, we're trying to construct the two Becketts. This is Gabriel in a dialogue with himself. And so how we do this, because we haven't got any money, is the old-fashioned way. So here's Gabriel on one side of the frame, and here's a tennis ball on a stick, and he talks to this tennis ball, and then we shoot that, and then he changes his clothes, and then he becomes this side of the frame, and the tennis ball's here, and talks back to himself. That's really quite difficult. I mean, technically, it's fiddly and annoying and time-consuming, but for the actor, it's really kind of difficult. You have to go, from being one version of the character to a different version of the character. And so, day one was quite tricky. And after the morning of work, we thought, this doesn't really work, does it? What's going on here? But then in the afternoon, things got a bit better. So by the time we got to day two, we sort of managed to make it, well, Gabriel had made it work. And he made it work by, we'd done a few interventions. I became the person he spoke to here sometimes, and sometimes it was my assistant director would be that person. So he was talking to a person. That made it better for him. And so then, it was difficult, to say the least, this technically and creatively, it was difficult. But once we got that going, it became quite smooth, because Gabriel got the two characters are quite different. One is more forgiving than the other, and one is more sort of self-loathing than the other. And so he caught that very well. And I think actually the costume change helps. It often helps actors say, well, hop out of this and hop into that, And so that was a helpful part of disengaging from one character and becoming the other. But it wasn't easy for him. And I think it wasn't particularly enjoyable either. We got through that in the first 3 days, and then we'd left that whole sort of difficult process behind.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. Thank you for that. Um, I do have to take the time to ask you about Night Boat to Tangier, which I believe is coming up soon or sometime soon.
Well, we hope so. It's it's had a bit of a stop and start kind of history, this one, but it's a brilliant book. If you know, it's a novel by Kevin Barry, who's an author I love, and the basic premise is you see two kind of down on their luck Irish gangsters who, have had a very storied past together. They're now looking to find one of their daughters in Spain who's gone off the rails and disappeared. And the book is brilliant. And Kevin Barry wrote the screenplay for the film, and it's being produced by Andrew Eaton, and we hope to have Michael Fassbender in it. We're just now waiting for the opportunity for everything to align to do it. So that's still a very viable project. It's just a question of aligning Michael, production, money, locations. So
right.
it's the usual kind of, quite difficult thing you have to construct to make any film happen. But it's definitely still a viable project.
And I heard, I understand that Ruth Negga is also attached to it, or
Indeed, this was the Ruth was is attached to it. So yeah, we've got her too, and it's two great actors involved in this, and we're just trying to find the time to do it when everyone's free and we have the money and the locations to do it.
got it. And so, what do you hope audiences really take away from Dance First?
Well, I think there's hopefully people who have some notion of Beckett will be interested in seeing the film. What I think was most surprising to me was how rich and surprising his life was, how many dramatic episodes there were. And when you look at his work, his plays, the cliche is not a lot happens in them. But his life, so much happens. I mean, he's in the French Resistance actively. He's stabbed for apparently no reason at all by a pimp in Paris. He has a very sort of complicated love life, particularly towards the end of his life, where he's got a mistress and a wife, both of whom know about each other and both of whom are kind of not very happy with the situation. So his life is full of drama and passion and adventure. And so if you think you're going to see something that's waiting for Godot, it's not that at all. It's actually a very rich and exciting life for a writer who you wouldn't normally associate with those kinds of adventures. So that I think is the surprise for the audience is how unpredictable his life was and how full it was of adventure and drama, given the nature of his work being not so adventurous. Well, it's adventurous, but it's not full of high stakes action.
Right. Well, I think it's a really fascinating film, so I think audiences will be very intrigued by it. And thank you for what you bring to it and your great work. It's great to talk to you.
It's nice to talk to you too. Thanks for your interest in the movie. It's been a nice conversation.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you be well and have a wonderful day.
Indeed. And you, thank you very much.